And in order to do that, I needed to create a vision statement on my life. The first thing I did said, I will never be him. I will never do the things that my father has done towards myself or towards other people, which means that I'm going to get a college education because I'm going to be a first-generation college student. I am going to be a great man, and I am going to be a great father. I knew I had to forge my own path and make different decisions in order to do that. I started creating this when I was 8 years old. That is the first thing I said. I will never be him. But I realized as I got older, I'm finishing high school, I was in college, working hard. By this time, my son was born. I realized I had a level of stagnation that was in my life. I knew I had to go into another level. But in order for me to go to the next level, I had to practice forgiveness. 6 months before I graduated college, I forgave my father. I was 28 years old. I knew that I had to practice forgiving him in order for me to go to the next stage of your life. Take heed in that. Know that you have to do certain things in your life in order to go to the next level. I knew that I had a great, grandiose story of how me forgiving my father was going to work out. I was going to talk to him. I was going to say, he's going to tell me back, you know, I love you so much. I really care about you. I want to build this relationship. I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm sorry. So my vision statement at the time was, I'm going to have a great relationship with my father because this is going to help my children. The story I got was completely different. So I had to create a mindset shift. I had to alter my path. I had to alter my vision statement. So I had to forgive even though if I never get, I'm sorry. Because I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for myself, and I'm doing it for future generations. I come to find out forgiveness is not praised upon on my father's side of the family. He didn't forgive his father didn't forgive his father, and his father didn't forgive his father. So I found out forgiveness was a generational curse. I found out forgiveness was a limitation upon my family. This is what happens when you create the changes in your life. You will have to make necessary changes and certain decisions in your life in order to stop the curses or the limitations upon your family. I knew that had to be done. And once I practiced my forgiveness, I was able to forge into the path of being great. I ended up graduating college 6 months later. I ended up having an extra child. I had my daughter a few years later, and I was able to build upon that. So once I forged my own path, and once I practiced forgiveness, I was able to flourish in the future, in my personal future, for myself and for future generations. But there was two things that I dealt with when flourishing in my own future. I realized that I was ashamed. I was ashamed of my life. I was ashamed of the things that I was experiencing. And I was told that I needed to own my journey. I needed to own the things that I needed in my life. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what you're experiencing, you need to own the fact that things happen in your life. I had to grow up owning the fact that I grew up without my father. Had to own the fact that I grew up in a single-parent household. Had to own the fact that I grew up poor. Had to own the fact that I worked 3 jobs while I was in college so that my son could see greatness within me and in himself. Had to own the fact that I grew up strong, and I grew up in the fact that I wanted to be different from my father. Had to own the fact that my father didn't own me. He didn't care about me, but I still thrived. I had to own the fact that my father only came to one sporting event my entire life. He's only came to one, and that was a football game, and I was terrible at it, y'all. I was awful. That's the game that I always remember. He doesn't realize the things that he done in my life, I was instructed to never do that to my own children. But I had to own that. Had to own the fact that I'm still figuring it out. Now I got 2 babies. I'm still figuring it out. But I am owning the journey that you're walking in. So today, making sure that you own the journey that is in your life. Also, making sure that you're responsible. I knew I had to look in the mirror every single day to see what's going on with me and the decisions that I plan on making. I knew I had to be responsible. Responsibility is one of the biggest assets in order to create change in your life. But I knew once I forged my own path, once I was able to forgive, and then I would be able to flourish in the future that was built for me. I learned that change is necessary. You need to create changes in your life in order to be successful. So look within yourself. Own everything that's happened to you. Do not be afraid. Do not be ashamed of everything that's happened in your life, because you are here for a reason. You are here for a purpose. You have a destiny that is fulfilling through you. But as long as you create those changes, you will be able to flourish in the future that is provided for you. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for, and we are also the change that we seek.
Completely out of control. There are so many things that we have absolutely no power over. And perhaps money is one of those things for you. As an assistant professor of accounting here at Greenville Tech, my passion is to help people understand their finances and know that you can be in control. I mean, money brings up a lot of different emotions, right? Whether it is stress and worry, defeat, or maybe it's empowerment, hope, and freedom. You likely fall into one of two categories. Either one, you are completely in control of your financial situation. You don't have to worry if you're going to lose sleep at night because a debt collector may come knocking on your door. You know that you can have peace because you have intentionally made efforts to save and maybe even invest your money. So this gives you a big sense of freedom. Or perhaps you fall in the other category where your money totally controls you. With every decision that you make, you have to consider whether or not you have the money to afford to do whatever the activity is. You have stress at night, and you know that if you were to miss just one day of work because you or your child were sick, that could completely destroy your financial situation. If this resonates with you, you are not alone. Unfortunately, many, if not most Americans, suffer with financial struggles, and that can result in some really awful consequences, whether it's depression, divorce, loss of sleep, weight gain, or even suicide. But the good news is, I am here today to tell you that it is time to make a change, and you can do this. You can be in control of your financial situation. So I'm going to do this by sharing 5 simple action steps that you can put into place so that you can go forward on a more positive path financially. So the first step is to budget. Now, how many of you kind of feel like that's a curse word? Adults hate to hear budgeting. And that's because we feel like we are being told what we have to do with our money. But the good news is, if you make your own budget, aren't you the one who's making all the decisions about what you do with your finances? You get to choose where each of that income is categorized within your expenses or savings. So the way to create a budget is you want to start out with taking your income and listing that out. You can do this in Excel, which as an accountant, I love Excel. Or maybe you want to use an app. There's lots of great apps for budgeting as well. So you want to list out what your expected income is, which is really, really simple when you are on salary because it's the same every month. But if you're hourly, it can be really tricky because your hours might vary from one week or 1 month to the next. So I would say take an average and maybe go even below that as your estimated income in your budget. Then this may be a little different than what you expect. You want to list out where you want to save money. So first you want to make sure you build an emergency fund. This is for things like car repairs or medical expenses, or 2 weeks ago my garage door wouldn't open and I had to pay $500 to get the garage door fixed unexpectedly. This is not, however, for an emergency vacation. However, you could save for your vacation, which is really wise. My husband and I like to set aside a couple $100s a month so that we know how much we can spend on a vacation when that time comes around, instead of getting into debt and then your vacation that was supposed to be stress-free creates more stress for the future. You also want to save for things like retirement, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in just a minute. Then you want to list out all of your expenses. That's the really not fun part, but that's where you have wiggle room and you can make improvements. So you want to list everything from rent and utilities to your gas and groceries. You also need to list out all of those fun things that you choose, whether it's your streaming services or subscriptions like Spotify, and even for those impulse buys. So if you are likely to impulse shop, whether it's online or in person, you want to have a budget line for that so that you know how much you can afford to spend. This will give you total control. And then the most important part is at the end of each month, you want to compare how much you actually spent with what your plan was. You can't expect it to be perfect, but that's where you can see where you can make improvements going forward. Our second action step is just 1% or small changes. So we all have things we need to improve upon, but a lot of times we get really excited and we just want to jump to doing it all at once. Like if you wanted to lose 50 pounds and you said, I'm going to do this in 1 month. Even if you happen to be successful with that, you probably are not doing that in a way that you're going to be able to continue a lifestyle for that. Same thing with finances. We want to take small steps at a time so that we can set ourselves up for big success in the future. This could be you're spending $7 on coffee every morning, 7 days a week. And I want to start dialing that back to just 6 days a week and then just 5 days a week until eventually I'm only going 2 days a week and those are just special days. I'm not saying cut out caffeine. That's a whole nother discussion. But, you can make your coffee at home instead. So making these small improvements could also be things like going to bed earlier. So how many of us get on our phone at night and just scroll through social media? Maybe you went to bed at 11, but you went to sleep at 1. So perhaps that's where you need to make those small improvements to help you to get to work or school on time. So these small improvements can really help you going forward. Third is automatic savings. So it's enough to have to, set money aside and try not to spend too much each month, but to have to remember to save it is difficult too. So how about you make that decision once and then you just have it automatically saving for you? Did you know your HR department, if you've got direct deposit set up, you can have them split that to different bank accounts? So maybe you have almost all of your money going here that you're going to spend, and then you say, hey, I want $200 a month put in this account that I'm not going to touch. Or maybe it's $20 a month, which is working towards something, and that's awesome. You definitely want to do automatic savings when it comes to your 401k, especially if your employer is going to match that at all. Even if you're 20. Actually, especially if you're 20, you want to be contributing to a 401k because it has so much time to grow and you actually can be wealthy. So these automatic savings can help set you up for success. Fourth is don't get into debt even if you're young. A lot of people are like, I'm so young, it doesn't matter. Later on, I'm going to be making more money. It'll take care of itself. Unfortunately, that is not the case at all. First of all, you are kind of getting in the habit of spending more money than you make. And second, hopefully you will make more money later, but you're also going to have a lot more in expenses. You might have a family, a house, a bigger vehicle, more health costs. So we don't want to go ahead and put that debt burden on our future. Let's focus on not getting into debt, even if you're young. And our fifth step is to not compare yourself to others. Teddy Roosevelt says, comparison is the thief of joy. And that was like 1,000,000 years ago. There was no social media. So think about how much more we compare ourselves now. I want to go on that vacation. I want those shoes. I want that outfit, that hairstyle. It is so hard not to compare ourselves to others that results in spending money. So I have 2 daughters. Whenever my daughter was turning 15 earlier this year, she really wanted a Stanley drinking cup. So I'm sorry. I know there's probably a lot of Stanleys right in front of me right now. But I'm like, I'm not spending $50 on a water bottle. So we got her an off-brand, and she hid it behind the cereal boxes so that she wouldn't have to take it to school. But my 13-year-old then tells me, Stanleys are the worst. They're all over the floor in the gym at school. They're falling over. There's water everywhere, and they're not even that cute. I was like, this is great. So you're not going to want a Stanley for your 13th birthday next month. She's like, what are you talking about? How did you possibly get that from what I just said? I have to have a Stanley or I won't fit in. I get that though. Even in my 30s, I still want to fit in. I still want those cool things. It's hard not to spend and compare. But remember that Your awesome personality should be what is attracting people to you, attracting friends to you, not your Stanley Cup or your Kendra Scott necklace or your Nike shoes. Your personality. Any of us could put those things on a credit card. All right, so we've talked about budgeting so that you can be in complete control. We've talked about making small improvements so you can have big changes. We talked about automatic savings so that you don't have to think about it constantly, but it's working for you on the side. Do not get into debt even though you're young because you're setting your future self up for failure. And don't spend money just trying to fit in. So I'll leave you with this. You are living life anyway. You might as well be working towards something wonderful. So which of these action steps are you going to start taking today to get on the right path financially?
Teaching in my brand new job, my first full-time job, my dream job. I was an assistant professor teaching chemistry at another school, and that might sound terrible to a lot of you, but for me, as a first-gen college student, this dream job, it just wasn't a reality, or I thought it wasn't a reality, I guess. But you combine teaching, you combine science, it was just great for me. And sure, I mean, there were some stressful times here and there, but nothing too bad, right? That was in August of 2019. So 2020 comes. We all know what that brings. I'm not going to go into that. But even when things started to return back to normal, something wasn't quite right. I thought it was just stress, and I thought it'll get better eventually, right? So here comes my second year. We're still chugging along. And here comes my third year. But things weren't getting better. They were getting worse. Eventually what it turned into was waking up with knots in my stomach, dreading going to work. It's like I had a little bubble over my head, a little cloud of dread. Just followed me everywhere. To work, back home again. It affected my mood, my relationship with others. It just wasn't a fun time. We'll just put it that way. So, in comes year 4. I did not take a picture for that first day of school. Now, what you see here might look like the progression of that career, and you'd be partly right. But what it also shows is the progression of my burnout too. And so I think that's a really great illustration for us today. So we're going to talk about identifying burnout, preventing it, and then learning how to manage it. Now, the reason year 4 is blank is probably because I was rushing out the door and I was late, because that happens a lot. But who knows? I did not take a picture my 5th year of school, and that's because I wasn't there. I left in the middle of this 4th year in December of 2022. Now, back then, I didn't know that I was burned out. I just thought I was stressed and there was a lot going on. So I Googled, what is burnout? And in came all of this information, and I'm like, man, yep, that's probably what it is. So I'm going to ask a couple questions. First question for you, have you experienced any of these symptoms before? Headaches, lack of motivation, emotional or physical fatigue, mood swings, irritability, feeling a sense of dread or feeling empty. Now, here's my little disclaimer for today. Just because you might have said yes to one or some of those, I cannot diagnose your burnout, okay? I might have a PhD, but I'm not that kind of doctor, okay? So don't trust any of that, all right? But I do think bringing awareness to it and us talking about it is going to help. Because see, for me, I experienced all of those symptoms in one way or another. In the beginning, this job that had given me so much joy, this dream of mine, it had left me empty by the end. Now, I think equally as important as identifying our symptoms is learning how to prevent it before it starts. So let's talk through that a little bit. Because see, when I started this job, I had no sense of work-life balance. I was bringing everything home with me to try to catch up and to get ahead. And that was before COVID, right? So the pandemic definitely gave us some bad habits with working from home, but I had already started this way before then. Work was home and home was work. So I think it all boils down to, if you can, leave work at work. Related to that, I think there's a trend that can sometimes happen in our lives where we think that overworking and being tired all the time are badges of honor. Overworking and being tired all the time are not badges of honor. It's exhausting. Back then, when I was starting to talk with friends and coworkers, everything revolved around work. Everything, it was almost like I was bragging about how tired I was, bragging about how much work I had to do. That's so silly, right? But I think we can sometimes find ourselves doing that. So I'm going to give you a couple tips that have helped me sort of keep those things separated. And if they help you, great. If not, I hope that you find one small step that you can start taking today to start setting those boundaries. So tip number 1, this is a little controversial. I don't keep email on my phone anymore. It doesn't stay on my phone. Tip number 2, if you can, try to set really firm boundaries around your working hours. Take that lunch break when you get the chance, right? Because that's a break in your day. You are supposed to have that brain break. I think it's really important. Tip number 3, when you bring your laptop home with you and it goes in your laptop bag, keep that laptop bag in a separate room in your house and shut the door as a symbol that I'm not going to work on that while I'm at home. I know, I hear the laughs. I get it. But regardless of what that looks like in your life, because this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation, I really hope that you'll start thinking about that today. What is one small step I can take, and what can I start today to help with those? So now that we've talked a little bit about identifying those symptoms and learning how to prevent it, let's talk about managing burnout. Again, I do not want this to happen to any of you. I really just think that the more that we talk about this, the better it can be. For me, I was in an extreme situation because when I quit, I felt like I was in survival mode. Remember, I didn't have any motivation to do anything. I didn't have any energy. And so instead of trying to self-help and fix my way through it, I had to sit and do nothing. And it's harder than you think. But when I did eventually start to want to do things again, I started with the fun stuff first, right? Because we need that joy back in our life. We need that fun to help prevent burnout as well. So question number 3 for you today is a fun question. What do you like to do for fun? What are your hobbies that you can keep in your back pocket so when things start to get a little stressful or a little past stressful, you've got them to fall back on? For me, it was baking for fun, not stress baking, because there's a difference. It was reading for fun instead of reading these self-help, let me fix everything about me kind of books. And I picked up my crochet hook in the first time in probably 5 years, right? So it was these fun things that I needed to start bringing that joy back into my life. I also, thankfully, had a really great support system at home, but I had to let them in. I had to let them help me instead of me trying to fix everything myself. I also had to start being kinder to myself too. Aren't we our own worst critics sometimes? I had to tell myself that it was okay to leave this job. It's okay. I had to completely make a career switch. So yes, I am still in higher ed. I'm here. But I'm not teaching anymore. And that's okay. I'm not doing anything related to chemistry anymore, which makes my little nerd heart a little sad sometimes. But that's okay, because I love my job and I love where I'm working now. It's okay if things aren't turning out the way that you expect them to. So back then, back at that job, I think I was in denial about what was happening. Well, I know I was in denial now, but back then I didn't. And I think I was scared. I was scared to admit that I had burnout. And I was scared to think about all the things that I might lose because of burnout. And I did lose some things. I'm not working at that job anymore and, here and there. But what I can tell you is that I gained so much more through it all too. See, there was life before burnout, you could say. But then there's life after burnout too. Burnout is not the end. It's the end of that season for me. Might be the end of that season for you. But it's also the beginning of a new season that's full of hope and joy and a whole lot of fun too.
In 1977, two airplanes collided on the Canary Islands, and 583 people died. In 1986, the Challenger launched. 73 seconds later, it exploded over the Atlantic Ocean, and all 7 people aboard died. In 2010, an oil rig exploded and sank in the Gulf of Mexico, spilling 3 million barrels of oil and killing 11 workers. What do all those things have in common other than the fact that they're tragedies? What they have in common is that there was someone at each of these places that knew something was wrong. They knew they should say something, but they didn't feel safe enough to do so. They didn't feel psychologically safe enough to speak up against those in authority. Psychological safety is not a new feeling. It's not a new concept. We all know what it feels like to want to say something, but feel like we just can't. But it wasn't until 1999 that Dr. Amy Edmondson coined the term psychological safety. And she defines it as being able to speak up, say something if you see something, and realize that there's no harm going to come to you. That's what psychological safety is. Think about the space that you occupy on a daily basis. Do you feel safe? If you're a student in the classroom, is your space safe? If you're a professor, is your space safe? No matter where you are, is your space safe? I've created a model, and the model is easy to remember because the acronym spells THRIVE. This model, if we all practice it as individuals, as businesses, we are helping make our space psychologically safe, and we are contributing to the psychological space of others. The first component of this model is T for training. Training is how you improve your team dynamics. Training is where you get the resources to find out what psychological safety is. We get trained every year on what to do in the event of an active shooter. If you're in academia, you get trained on FERPA. How many of you get trained on what psychological safety is? How many of us are trained to handle conflict, which often contributes to our spaces feeling unsafe? So training is a key component of this model. The next component of this model is harmony. In the past, there was always this push for work-life balance, and work-life balance is good, guys, it is. You need to balance your work life and your home life. But now there's this big push towards work-life harmony, because researchers, specifically Chibs Okereke, says that our personal lives and our work lives intersect. And instead of trying to keep them apart, let them intersect, because they can enrich one another. And this doesn't mean that you have to come to work and share every personal thing about you. What they're saying is that if there are 2 wives in this space that can identify with each other because they have husbands in the military, let that bond happen. If there are two fathers that can identify because they have sons playing football, let that bond happen. And when that bond happens, it's creating safe spaces. The next part of the model is respect. R for respect. In 2008, there was a study done, 20,000 employees around the world. And each one of these employees says that they want the number one attribute of their leaders to be respect. They want to be respected, and they in turn will give respect. Respect does not mean that you accept or agree with everything someone says. That's not what it means. Respect means, okay, we disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We can do this the right way. And respected people will speak up. And that's what this model is all about, getting people to speak up when they see something wrong. The next component of the model is inclusion. We hear diversity and inclusion all the time, right? Those words are everywhere. Diversity is my reality. I'm a Black woman. Inclusion is my choice. I get to choose who I want to sit at my table. I get to choose who I want to conversate with me. I went to a basketball game several years ago to watch my son play basketball. And while I was at the game, I noticed that no one would throw the ball to Charlie. And it was so obvious. There was no harmony out there. No, I don't care how close Charlie got to the basket. He could wave his arms, he could stump his feet. They would not throw him that ball. And so when we got home, I asked my son, what was up with keeping the ball away from Charlie? And he said, well, Mom, in the game of basketball, we have this phrase called know your personnel. You have to know who's on the court and what they can do. Charlie was filling in for someone, one of the starters. He just didn't have the skills. He just couldn't play as well as we could. And we knew if we threw him the ball, all he was going to do was turn it over to the other team. So what they said to Charlie, without verbally saying it, you don't matter, Charlie. We don't respect you. You're not a part of this team. You can't help us. And what inclusion says, if Charlie's out there, if he's near the basket and he's open, you need to make him a part of the conversation. Pass him the ball. Because who put Charlie out there without giving him the proper training? Who put him out there to be disrespected by his members? And that was not a safe space for Charlie. Who was Charlie going to tell, you know? At that moment, they didn't make Charlie feel like a valued member of the team. And that brings us to the next component of the model, V for value. Value is the emotional response you get from being respected. Valued people will speak up. They'll tell you when there's something wrong with them. They really will. And at that moment, Charlie had no one to tell because everybody on the team were alike. He was the different one. They didn't include him. And so you have to make sure that you're making your space, people in your space, and yourself feeling valued. If you put all these things together, you end up with an empowered person. The last component, E for empowerment. The root word of empowerment is power. An empowered person will tell you if there's something wrong. Why? Because you've given them the power to. You've given them the power to speak their mind. And so they will tell you when there's something wrong. Let's go back to the beginning when I told you about those 3 awful tragedies. Let's go back. Imagine if on that runway that co-pilot had said, "Sir, we have not been cleared to take off. Don't move this plane." Imagine if he had felt empowered enough to say that. Imagine if that engineer had said, "There is a problem with the O-ring that could be catastrophic. We cannot launch." Don't launch. Imagine that. Imagine if one of those workers on that oil rig had said, "We're getting some abnormal readings. We may need to retire this rig. Something's going on." Imagine how those 3 voices, the power of those 3 voices, could have changed history as we know it today. You all have a voice. You do. And whether you know it or not, your voice is powerful. And I want you to use that voice to create a space where you can thrive.
Think back with me, if you would, way back. All the way back to your very first day of kindergarten. You walk into the classroom and you think, here I am. There's so much to be learned. There's so much to explore. But there may have been some fears in your mind as well. You may have thought, will my teacher like me? Will I be able to make friends here? Will this be an exciting year of kindergarten? All these fears may have been swirling around in your mind. Now think to maybe a little bit more recent of a scenario. A time in your life where you were being interviewed for a job. You have to present yourself. You have to share with that interviewer who you are. And you may have had some very similar fears in your mind. Will this person like me? Will I be able to thrive here? Will I be able to share who I am with this person? Some of you may be getting ready for a company meeting, a team meeting, a department meeting. You may have to share what you've been doing. And you hope to do the exact same thing, to share who you are and what you've been working on. You may have some fears and anxieties about that as well. You may be getting ready to give a big update in your annual meeting, or to the board, or to other important people, and you have to present who you are, what your team has done. These moments can be unsettling. And they may be relatable to you. And if you're anything like me, you really like your stability in life. You really like your comfort. You really like your security. And if you can stay in that space, then you'll be safe. Well, today, I'm here to share with you some empowering things, some ways that you can break out of that comfort zone to be even better. Those fears don't have to hold you back, and you can push forward with these 3 simple things that you can keep in mind as we go forward. Now, as a public speaking instructor here at Greenville Tech, I get to do this all day, every day with my students. I get to help them overcome fears. I get to help them share their story. And that story has so much power. So as you're listening today, think through these 3 things. Think about your story, think about your fears, and think about others. Let's get started with thinking about your story. Now, everyone has a story. Every person has special things that have happened in their life that have made them into the person of who they are. There's been so many wonderful things, so many positive things. There may have been some unfortunate circumstances as well. There may have been some things that we really wouldn't have wished to have happened. But all of those things together create one cohesive story, and that's who you are. Now, you may think, my story doesn't matter. Why would anybody listen to what I have to say? I'm just me. What power, what influence do I have? Well, guess what? You have people all around you. You have friends. You have coworkers. You have people in your life that you're close to. And these people probably wouldn't be close to you unless they saw some sort of value in you. If they enjoyed shared experiences with you. If they enjoyed spending time with you. And guess what? It's probably the other way around too. You enjoy being with those people too. And guess what? All of these shared experiences, they matter. People care about them. People want to hear. People want to know. I can think of so many illustrations in my own life of people who've shared things with me that have helped me go forward, that have helped me become the person I am today. Family members and friends have both pushed me to be successful in certain ways. I can think of even simple things, like baking with my mom, like doing construction projects with my dad. These little things that I've learned along the way, I've been able to share with others, and I've been able to help some of those other people as well. Your story does matter. Your experiences do matter. I have a counterintuitive idea for you now. We all know that fears are powerful. We all know that these things are out there and they hold us back. How many of you have wanted to try to do something, but you've been too afraid, so you didn't do it? How many of you have wanted to try to accomplish something, but you didn't know what was going to happen, so you didn't do it? Fears are powerful. Fears hold us back. Fears keep us from accomplishing and being successful in the things that we want to be successful in. But this counterintuitive idea is that fears are actually the most empowering thing in your life. Fears are what help you identify your weaknesses. Fears are what help you identify the things that are holding you back so that you can take intentional steps forward to accomplish them. Fears are what empower you to be the person you hope you could be. Fears are what empower you to push yourself to be successful. As a little bit of a personal illustration, I wouldn't be where I am today without facing my own fears. And when I say where I am today, I mean right here on this stage, standing in this green circle. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little bit nervous right now. But guess what? I believe I have something that's valuable for you. And that leads me to my third idea, thinking about others. Once again, this is a little bit counterintuitive. The most important part of your story is not you. The most important part of your story is not your story. The most important part of your story is the other person. The person that you're sharing your story with. Those experiences, those things that you've been through, the highs, the lows, all of those are what helps somebody else when you're willing to share it with them. Think about the mentors in your life that have pushed you to do something. Think about those people that have nudged you towards what you wanted to do or to accomplish and have helped you find success in that. I can think of a couple friends in my life who have been vulnerable and transparent enough to share with me some of their successes, some of their failures, because they knew it would be valuable for me. Because they didn't want to see me do the same thing that they did. They wanted me to try better, to do better, and to accomplish more. I'm so thankful for people like that. And you're probably thankful for people like that in your life as well. You can be that person to someone else. You can be that person who helps someone else achieve what they're hoping to achieve, that pushes them towards success by sharing your own story. Now, if you're anything like me again, I look for the smoothest, easiest, most obstacle-free path forward possible. I hate struggling through things. I hate obstacles, I hate barriers, and I hate things in my way. If those things could just get out of the way, wouldn't life be so much easier? But guess what? Those obstacles are in our life because we're able to then overcome them, become stronger, and become better. Without those obstacles, we don't have the opportunity to grow. Without those obstacles, we don't have the chance to try and fail and then try again and succeed. We don't have the chance to become even better. Those obstacles are there to help us to accomplish things that we didn't think was possible. Now think of someone in your own life who's been helpful to you. you have that person in your mind? What is it that they did for you? What is it about their story that pushed you and helped you be successful? Now I want you to think of one person in your life that you can do that for. Do you have them in your mind? Do you know who they are? What is it about your story that you want to share with them because you want to see them succeed? Be bold. Be open. Put yourself out there. Share with them. It's not about you. It's not about your story. It's about them and helping them be successful. What might happen if you don't do that? Well, what might happen if you do? Be confident. Share your story. Push someone else towards success. And watch them flourish.